Good to have you on the podcast. Thanks for joining.
Thanks for having me, Brian. I'm excited. I love the name.
Well, oh, thank you very much. Well, what's
Hmm.
so funny is I had your friend Jess Ekstrom on about a year ago this time,
Love Jess.
and actually, it's funny is I wanted to talk with you at that time or a little bit after. I'm actually glad we're not talking till now because you had a big 2024, like some big life things happen, right? Um, that we can get into. So, anyway, so it's good
Yeah.
to have you on and talk through some of that. Um, So I was going to start. Well, there's a couple ways I could start. I can give you dealer's choice, but I'm actually kind of curious from a business standpoint. This whole just get started.
Hmm.
It seems like I think it was around August, so about 6 months ago, you exited. You're kind of done with your
Hmm.
business. You did for like 20 years. So I'm just kind of curious, like how do you feel? Like what do you feel on
Yeah.
the other side?
Yeah. You know what? It I feel great. I feel I'm really proud of the work that I did there for my whole life, basically my whole adult life. And I think I'm in an interesting position because my business partner is my sister and she's still running the company. So it feels in a way that we were just at a point where we kind of considered this as an option, and when an opportunity came, we just kind of felt like we were in different places, which we both respect and care for each other. So it was like, listen, we can both have a different path from here, even though we've worked together for a long time. And so there was mutual love and care and respect there. And so I felt like it was time for me to have a different chapter, a new chapter of life. I'd literally done that since I was in college, and like I said, super proud of where we were. I left, we had about 70 franchises. It started as a part-time job, and so I felt like I was ready. I was excited for different opportunities that had been coming my way, and I felt like it was time. And honestly, it was just like a gut instinct in my own world. And so I feel good. It's a huge shift, as you can imagine, but it was the right choice for me at the time. And I'm really proud of what I did, but excited about a new chapter and so much newness in my life now.
Yeah. How did it's interesting. I wasn't even thinking of going here, but I'm gonna go here. I told you sometimes we just take random turns. But so I have an older brother. He's 17 months older, and I think your sister's a few years older, right?
Hmm.
And him and I, he's very entrepreneur. We've talked about maybe doing a business together at some point. I'm kind of curious, like how that dynamic went. It seems like the relationship is good, but I'm just kind of curious, like how y'all navigated that without getting the personal sister stuff that could get in the
Yeah.
way to actually business.
Well, I think the thing that worked was for 23, 25 years, whatever it was, we both, first of all, really believe in what we did and the product and the brand. We loved it. And so we both had that like core foundation of like, this is important work that we're doing. Like we're bringing positivity to kids, and that's important. And then I think a big factor is just our level of grind, hustle, work ethic. We're well aligned. So, it wasn't always equal, but it in the big picture it was. So there were times like if she was having babies, I was maybe carrying a little bit more of the business, and then vice versa. When I was having, kids or whatever things would happen in my personal life, she could kind of pick it up. But at the baseline, we had the same work ethic. And so when we were both fully available, things would be clicking in a certain way. There was a speed of trust, so we had the ability to move quickly because there was nothing but trust there. And so I think that's the key factor. Like I couldn't have worked with anybody that didn't have the same drive. And I don't think it all has to be, at 100. Like if you both are at 60, but you're both pretty good there, that's fine, you know. But we had to be in sync there, and we were, and I think that's why it worked for decades.
Hmm. Yeah, I could see that. I guess, thinking and using my brother, obviously, when like, him so I know him so well, like, your sister so well, you also kind of can anticipate, like you mentioned that kind of
Yeah.
quick trust. You can anticipate probably what they're thinking maybe and how
Yeah.
they're maybe trying to go about things versus someone that's new, like a new co-founder. Like you don't really know the
Yeah.
level of activity they're going to potentially do or the decisions
Totally.
they're going to. Yeah.
And the thing about us, Brian, is we were kids when we started. Like we were, when I started this, I was 19. So like everything, like we grew together as humans, as adults, as parents, as, like all of those things. So like we didn't I always go back, like in the early years, we had no idea what we were doing. Like we just kind of kept showing up, and it kind of kept, it felt like what we used to do as kids. Like we'd make stuff up at home, and it felt like we were just making stuff up but making money and had a company. And so we grew together, and we grew up together in real life and then in business as business women as well. And so, in some way I'm like, it's easy to look back and be able to say these things. In the moment there wasn't strategy, it was just like, it just works. So I think it's tough when people are evaluating, like, should I work for my family or not? I mean, you're only going to know if you try. I would say if you have red flags beforehand, don't do it. If you don't have any red flags, then let it rip and see what happens. I mean, it's the whole premise of your podcast. Like sometimes you just have to go and figure it out, but you're not going to, there's no silver, there's no crystal ball. Yeah, you don't know. And you could check all the boxes, and then it could be a disaster. And you might be really nervous, and you might think I'm not sure if this is going to work, and it might be sensational. And you're only going to know if you just do it. So, yeah, I just go back to, like, we didn't really know. It just worked.
Yeah. So I want to go back one more time to again, last year, and you can take maybe the weeks prior, maybe a month or two prior, maybe it was a year or two, but like, I'm really curious about the mentality of, because you've did it for so long. It's
Mm-hmm.
like anything else. It's like that sunk cost fallacy of like, oh my God, I can't stop this because I've been doing it for so long. Like,
Mm-hmm.
how is the mental preparation, I guess, to get to that decision of
Yeah.
saying, maybe I want to do some other things. I
Yeah.
have to.
Well, I mean, it wasn't a month. It wasn't. It was, when I look back now, it was probably years leading me to that decision for my own exit. After getting through COVID as a company, like we went to school. Tippi Toes goes into schools and offer dance classes on site. COVID was not kind to us, right? It was brutal. We got through it, and our franchise owners got through it. It's one of the things I'm most proud of in my professional career. But that was gnarly for I mean, just speaking for me, that was really, really hard. And that was also like, at that point we had already been, it was really just Sarah and I. We grew Tippi Toes at that point to like 35 franchise owners, and we did everything. And so it was hard work. It was fully invested. There were no boundaries, I would say, for me. Like, I we did every role. It was hard work. COVID hit. We got through it. And it was just like, then we started to grow quicker. We brought on a franchise, like a consulting company that helped us grow. And it was just all these pieces. We started to grow really fast, and it was fun. And one of the things, when I look back, and I can't say that I knew this ahead of time, but the work became less compelling for me because of where the business was. I felt like in a lot of ways I had put a flag in the ground. I built, my sister and I together, we built this amazing company, and I was content with where we were. And there was also a major loyalty to my love for Tippi Toes and my sister and the brand. If I didn't have the same tenacity and drive to build it and crush it and wake up every day wanting to make it better, it's not fair for me to be in the role of owner, COO. That's not fair to the brand. And that was a huge consideration for me, in the months leading up to it. And we had been approached by private equity, and multiple times. And so all of these are all pieces of the story, right, that had been happening in the years leading up to it. The work was really hard. We did it. I felt like in so many ways I'd accomplished. Like, I didn't feel this drive to do whatever the next thing was. Going from 70 to 100 didn't, for me, I don't know, I just was kind of ready in all of these ways, and all of these things kind of hit at once too, like slowly. And then all of a sudden you're looking at it, you're like, private equity is coming, we have this opportunity. And I just felt personally I owed it to the brand to be honest with where I was. Meanwhile, I'm having cool opportunities come, that I'm feeling this like fire inside of me that I realized at that point I wasn't feeling for Tippi Toes. And that was an indicator to me that it's my job as an owner and someone that was responsible for helping to create this brand to recognize that and to step away. So it was all those pieces. It was definitely not clear cut. It was definitely hours and weeks of my time and my reflection and conversations and trying to figure out what to do and having no clue. And I didn't, like, that was the other thing, is I didn't have something I was stepping into. I just
Yeah.
knew I needed to step back, but there wasn't someplace I was going. I had no clue what I was going to do, but I just felt like that was my instinct again. And trust my instinct. And
Yeah.
that's really ultimately what led me to be willing to say, okay, like I'm going to close this chapter and open up a new book and figure out what the hell that's going to be, because I don't know what that's going to look like because I have no clue. So yeah.
Have you gotten good at I kinda think of it like, like a car, like downshifting. It's like, one day you woke up and you're, like, not doing that anymore. It's like, "Oh, I
Mm-hmm.
don't have to do this work today." And sometimes that's really hard to, like, be settled with. I'm just and I'm wondering that more of a random question. You can take whatever part of it you want. But, like, did you get good running the business where you took time off, where you reflected, or were you always, like, going 0 to 60 every single day without
Yeah.
that time? I'm curious how you recognize that and able to kind of, I guess, transition into that, over the time, I guess.
Yeah, great question. I would say we started to build our staff. And as we brought people on, I saw their excitement and their fire and their drive. And I think subconsciously, I wasn't aware of it at the time, but I was like, wow, they are so fired up. Man, they really, and it just, I think I saw it, like, and I was excited. I was so grateful to have someone like those people that were that are still are there at Tippi Toes. I was so excited that they were as excited as they were, but I couldn't help but notice that I maybe didn't have that same feeling that they did. Um, I was able to is actually really my whole last year was insane. Um, we are personally we were renovating a house. We literally had like no wall to the front of our house for whatever. We were like living upstairs. It was insane. It was do not recommend, but actually was great. But we basically rebuilt our house into our dream house, and then we lived there for basically a month, and then we moved across the country to West Virginia for an opportunity for my husband. So during that time, as an owner of the company, my sister was the other owner, I was able to pull back a little bit because I had to deal with family things. We were moving across the country, we were finishing a renovation, we were changing everything in our entire life. Every single facet of our life changed in 2024. So I did pull back a little bit even before I made this decision, which I think now looking back, I had nothing to do with me exiting, but it all lined up in that way. So I kind of pulled back for a few months. Then this exit opportunity came up, and I was like, I think this is right. And that's kind of how it went down. So it was literally, Brian, like 4 or 5 months of going from, I need to focus on this massive life stuff that's happening with my family, exit my company, move across the country. Um, so it was crazy. It was intense. But I think pulling back also helped me realize, was I missing it that much? No. Was I, it was just like self reflection. I didn't know any of that until I took the time, to figure that out. So it was not linear, not clear. It was a very interesting, challenging time for me personally, for sure.
Yeah. If I could ask and go as deep as you want here, but it's something that's always curious for me, especially with folks that are married or have been married or in relations, whatever. I'm assuming didn't make this decision by yourself in a vacuum, right? You have a spouse there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how how do those conversations with your husband go? Do you guys have like business meetings to talk about, like how are things going? You talk about that's a big move to West Virginia. So I'm just kind of
Yeah.
curious because it's something a lot it comes up a lot is folks are like, "Oh yeah, I made this decision." I'm like, "Well, you didn't make it yourself, most likely,
Yeah.
or if you
Yeah.
did, that's
Right.
a big issue."
Yeah.
So anyway, curious where you would take that. Just any thoughts you have on it. That's
Yeah.
worked
I
well,
mean,
or it hasn't.
Chris and I do like everything's a conversation, and I would say it's like an ongoing conversation. So it's not a formal like let's have let's this is time to do this. It's like an ongoing conversation for weeks or months, depending on what it is. The move to West Virginia was something we saw coming a few months in advance. Before we made that decision, we were having basically daily conversations. What about this? What about this? What about the schools? We're moving away from my parents that were closer to us when we were in Texas. All those conversations were ongoing. So I did not make this decision in a vacuum. I talked to, I was talking to my therapist. I was talking to my husband. I was, talking, and that was really it, because this was a big deal, and there's not that much more. There's not. I can't. It wasn't something I could really open up to, other people. There were a couple mentors that I did talk to about it. That in confidence, and I could just be like, this is a situation. So there were a couple mentors that helped. But for Chris and I, the move to West Virginia, this was for his job. And we had conversations, and like from the time we started dating, it was like we were always committed to just following the dream and not following the money, and whatever that meant is what we were going to do. And we've done that. And luckily what I've learned is, the money works its way out if you're doing things you love. And so we took the leap together, but neither one of us, like, he didn't make the decision to move the family to West Virginia. I didn't make the decision to leave my company. There were conversations over and over and over. I rely on him to reflect what he sees. And his view of me was really important to me. What are you seeing? How are you seeing me as a mom right now? How are you seeing me as a partner? How are you seeing me as a friend? How are you seeing me as in general? And that was important for me because we're blind to certain things in our own life. And I relied on him a lot for that. And his insight was important to me for sure.
Yeah. Well, I know a lot of, I mean, you all have been married for what, 20,
17,
excuse me,
17
17.
years. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, no, I mean, I'm a product of divorce. I was married
Mm-hmm.
for about 7 years. It didn't work out.
Mm-hmm.
But I learned from that experience, like if you don't have regular conversations,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't talk about this stuff, that's when it's like two ships going in totally opposite directions.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think,
And we're both like, it's interesting. He was just on a road trip because now he's a college baseball coach, and we talk so much when he's gone or if I'm gone, because it's like there's no distractions of life, and we go deep with certain things. I want to know about his pitching staff. I want to know what's going, because he cares. So I care, and he wants to know what's going on. Now I'm working with Jesse Itzler and doing different things over there, and he knows the players that I'm working with. He knows what that looks like. Because otherwise, to your point, you become two ships in the night, especially when you have kids. We've got 3 kids that are 8, 10, and 12. We are in the car all the time. Like, it is a very busy time of life, and if you don't choose to have those conversations with your partner, I can very easily see how you start to live separate lives. And I'm not interested in that. I don't, and he isn't either. So the regular conversations are really important for us.
well, you mentioned Jesse, so I wanted to chat about that. Jesse and Sarah, are like my two big, like, I just love following their journey and just their
Yeah.
different paths, and they always jack me up to like want to do more. So tell me about. Obviously, I think we've known them for several years, but tell me about this
Mm-hmm.
opportunity, Adventure Club, and how. And really, what I'm curious about is you probably had a lot of opportunities that came across your plate. How do you make that choice to say
Mm-hmm.
this feels right?
Yeah. So it was, luck, timing. It was that had a huge impact. When I exited my company, I sent a text to Sarah and to Jesse to just be like, just to tell them, because, we're not like, it's not like I'm super close friends with them, but they have been instrumental in my life in different ways. And I've had the pleasure of knowing them, working with them to some degree, mainly Jesse, but I have had the time, some interaction with Sarah. And, it was a big deal. And I didn't know what it was, but I knew the people in my life that made an impact on me. I just wanted them to know where I was and kind of also be like, I just wanted to put it out there in the world to certain people. So I let them know. And, weeks, like, time went by. I don't even know how long it was, a few months maybe. And then Jesse called and was just like, what are you doing? What's up? What's your next chapter? And really, I was kind of like, I was taking a 20-second time out. Really wasn't doing anything. We moved to West Virginia, getting the kids settled. We started some renovations on this house because we're psycho. And I knew I wanted to speak. That's something I really love doing. And I it's always been like on the back burner, and I really wanted to bring it more to the forefront because I love it so much, and I find it to be so I just like being able to help others in that capacity. Anyways, so I told him that, and he said, well, would you, I got this idea. Would you come in and help with this? And it started as just like a little bit, and then, he was like, let's talk about, just doing sales for it. I was like, yeah, that'd be fun. Like, and for me, the reason that it was a very quick yes when he called was because I knew who I was going to be working with, and I knew what the work was. I greatly admire the people that I would be spending my time with, and I believe in the work that Jesse was going to do with Adventure Club. So that was it. I didn't need to know too much more. I trust myself enough to figure out whatever would come my way. I have enough business experience, and whatever, I'll figure out whatever the gaps are for me. But I knew that I would like the work and like the people I was with. That was all I needed.
Mm,
And so I jumped in quick and was like, let's go, let's do this. And it's been great. It's been such a fun journey. It's been short. I mean, it's only been a few months, but it's so much fun, and it's a different, totally different experience. I'm an employee now, kind of. I guess I'm a contractor. I don't know, anyways. But it's kind of an interesting role. But I'm like, how no better place than to be around an entrepreneur like Jesse, to learn more and see different things. And I'm just think I'm curious, and I've got a desire to put myself in new positions, and this checks both of those boxes.
mm. Yeah, it seems like, I've interviewed hundreds of people on this podcast, and I would say, like, if I had to, because people have asked before, "Oh, Brian, what are the 2 or 3, like, threads between
Mm-hmm.
most or all of them?" And I think curiosity is probably one of
Mm-hmm.
those, like, you don't have all the answers, you're
Mm-hmm.
not right a lot of the time, but you're willing to kind of see things out and, like, find things out and, turn over some rocks. So it's funny that you mentioned that because it seems like even, we can follow up, thousands of people online. It seems like the ones that are not always saying I'm right, the same that are like, I'm not sure about this, but I'm going to explore it further.
Mm-hmm.
That seems like the best approach, right? Have
Mm-hmm.
you found that in your career?
100%. And I would say the people that I love to follow the most are also super authentic in that they don't act like they have all the answers. They don't act like they knew it all. They share the underbelly of things like, oh man, that I really screwed that up or whatever, because it's believable. As soon as
Mm,
someone's super polished and acts like they've figured it all out and they did it the right way, I'm like, boring and untrue. Like, it's just not true. Like, you just
right.
can't, it's not how it goes. Like, it's just not how it goes. One of the things I talk about during my speeches is, the way you move from unqualified to qualified is through action, and you have to just do it. And so, there have actually been multiple times that Jesse has given me opportunities over the years, even when I was working with Tippi Toes, that he gave me opportunities and I was like, what? Like, a radio show was one of them. I don't know anything about a radio show. I don't know. Like, I have no idea. He's like, do you want to do a daily radio show? I was like, sure. No clue what I was doing, right? But you figure it out, so you become qualified, but you have to do it to get qualified, and even at that point, there's always more opportunity to grow. So, but it's that curious, it's being willing to know there's a gap and run towards it and figure out if you can fill the gap, or if you need help filling the gap, or if you don't care and you want to leave and that's not the job for you. I mean, there's only one way to do it, and that's to jump into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I remember the phrasing imposter syndrome comes up a lot.
Mm,
And, I think we always think of it as like a negative thing. And I remember Seth Godin said something that kind of really changed my tone on this. He said, you should feel like an imposter because you've never done it, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Like, you are an imposter. You've never done the thing. Like, you never hosted a radio show, but it doesn't mean you shouldn't go after it. If your
yeah.
heart's really telling you, all it means is that you're uncomfortable because you're in this little bubble and this thing is
Hmm.
outside that bubble. Okay, do
Hmm.
you really want to do it? I don't know.
Yeah.
That it really changed my perspective.
100%.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I think imposter syndrome is like a sign that you're doing something that is a good, like, you're on the right track, in my opinion. Otherwise, you're doing something you can do. If I was going to go, babysit a family with 1 4-year-old and I had to be there for 4 hours, I would have no imposter syndrome because I'm like, oh yeah, I can do that. But I wouldn't be stretching myself. I wouldn't be growing myself. I've already raised kids. I already know I can babysit a 4-year-old. No, that's easy. I wouldn't have
Right.
imposter syndrome. I only have imposter syndrome with things, and that's why I'm like, there's this negative connotation. I don't even like it. It's like, I get that feeling of like, can I do this? It's that feeling of like, oh, what's gonna happen? That's, to me, like what imposter syndrome is, in a way. It's like, I don't know that I should be here. I don't know that this is right for me. I don't know that I'm capable of this. I don't know that this is the room I should be in. Should I be at this table? I don't know how I got at this table. And you just go. You just figure it. You just go. I had an experience as in high school, or really my freshman year of college, where I had an incredible opportunity and I didn't feel like I belonged there, and I missed completely the value that I brought to that place and why I was there. And I missed an unbelievable opportunity because I walked away from this thing that was really big deal. And it crushed me, and I also took a lot of years to figure this out, but now I'm like, I'm never going to wonder why I have an opportunity. If I have an opportunity, I'm going to pull the chair up and be like, well, I don't know, but I'm here, so I'm going to contribute what I can. And sometimes I won't know what that contribution is, but if I stay here, I'll figure it out. So you've got to stay in those moments of opportunity, even if you don't know why you're there, because eventually you're the value you bring there, or something will reveal itself. But if you walk away from it, you're never going to know. You're never going to grow. You're never going to figure out why you're supposed to be there. And yeah, so I had that unfortunate, sad situation. Another thing I talk about when I give speeches, but gosh, it's such a gift to me now because I'm not going to walk away or wonder why I have opportunities. So when Jesse Itzler calls and is like, "Hey, you want to run this thing for me?" I'm like, "Sure." Were there moments of like, "What the hell? I don't know. Like, can I do this?" Absolutely. To this day, all the time, which just tells me I'm in the right spot, because that's the only way you're going to grow, is
Yeah.
to do stuff like that. It's all the cliche things, but it's like you have to keep hearing it, and somebody's going to say it in a way that someone will hear it differently, and they'll be like, "Okay, I'm going to go for it. She didn't know. I'm going to go for it." And that's why I love podcasts. That's why I love speaking. That's why I love books, is because you just hear different versions of the stories, and hopefully it triggers something for somebody, and that's worth it. It's worth it for somebody else to feel that.
Well, and I think to the untrained eye, that's where a lot of people call it luck. Now, certainly luck's included in it in some
Mm-hmm.
capacity, but what they don't even what you've shared to, like, they don't understand all of the stuff you went through in the background. Maybe you haven't shared online or what, but you dealt with, and that pushed you to get to making that decision or run into those people or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think it's ridiculous of like, oh, they only got lucky. Sure, some people get lucky. We're in the
Yeah.
right place at the time. But generally, there's a backlog of a lot of experiences and events that happened,
Yeah.
good or bad, that got them to that spot. You
Totally
know,
agree. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm so with you. I'm like, yes, I believe in luck. And I don't think it happens in a vacuum. I think they're like, so Jesse calling me at the time that I'd exited my company, but I'd also had a little bit of time off, like that timing felt pretty lucky. It was at a time when he was looking for this, looking for something, like the time worked out. Well, that was lucky. But I also was ready and he was ready, and we both knew of what the other one was doing. And there was a lot of circumstances that got us to that place to be able to have that luck work out for both of us.
Well, yeah, I mean, you obviously have a let's use that because I think it's a great example for folks to I don't know how long you've known them for, but it seems like you've known them a little bit for many years. But I even think what you said a few minutes ago, you reaching out to them and letting them know,
Mm-hmm.
"Hey, I exited this," whether you asked for advice or just, "Hey, letting you know," whatever. Most people wouldn't do that,
Yeah.
right? So the fact that you did that, you created that maybe in his head, he goes like, "Huh, she's a free agent." Maybe,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
he wouldn't know
Totally.
that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and that wasn't an accident. I wasn't like, I didn't reach out to them to be like, "Oh, whatever." I knew, like, I hoped that something might trigger
Sure.
them at some point, so it's like, back to your point, like, that wasn't luck that they knew, it was luck that the timing worked out, but all these circumstances, you're right. It's a very good example because there was some strategy involved. I've known him since 2019. When I first reached out to him, he didn't know me at all, and I reached out to try to interview his mom for a podcast I hadn't started. And anyways, and that was how we met. That was luck that he responded to that DM. And then an opportunity came. And then every time an opportunity came my way from Jesse, I over delivered and I did everything I could to make an impact. And then he kept giving me opportunities. And then next thing you know, doing what I'm doing today, And so, there's luck involved for sure, but it matters more, and like there's more of an upside of luck when you've done all the other work. Sometimes luck is just luck, but then it becomes something more when there's been work and strategy and effort put in all these other areas. That's when luck can really come alive.
Sure. Now, do you get I have my big ass calendar out here. Do you subscribe to that? Do you have your Masogi? Do you do any of that stuff?
I do. Yeah, I do. It's, what's so cool is that, so Jesse's got the big ass calendar is like, you can see your whole year in one gigantic poster. But I love it because as soon as I see it, I'm like, I see the gaps and I see like, oh, actually one of the things I did is after I filled it in early in the year, I was like, okay, my kids are good. They've got good stuff going on. I don't need to like, it was reflection I needed of like, we're going here, we're doing this, or having this experience. And I was like, okay, that's plenty. I don't want to, like they can be bored, And so it's just a really great way to see a big picture, and then also to be like, oh, I need to do more of this. I need to do more of that. And so yeah, so that is for sure something I subscribe to. I love it. I appreciate it. It's helped me. And yeah, it's just it's a good way to look at the year and approach it with thoughtfulness. And then to look back at the year and be like, wow, look what I did. Because I have the tendency to be like, I don't know what I did in 2024, but here we are. I kind of don't reflect that much on the past. And I like that calendar kind of allows me to do that.
It's a phenomenal idea if anyone's thinking about it. I mean, obviously, I'd go get one, because it's so funny. I remember, I think it was like, yeah, it was like the end of 2017, and this is when I really started to, kind of just get started, was kind of born, and like I had,
Mm-hmm.
and over many years I had changed, but I remember saying to myself, like, what did I do this year? Like, I didn't really feel like I did a lot,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
and so obviously I tried to be more thoughtful. So like when a few years ago, when Jesse, I got his calendar last year as well. Like when it came out, I was like, I'm gonna get this because to your point, like I love seeing it out there, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
one of those guys. Like I'm putting it on the calendar, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
gonna do
Mm-hmm.
it. If
Mm-hmm.
I put it
Yeah.
on, I'm very stubborn like that. So, but anyways, I think it's a great approach because oftentimes we finish a year and you're like, what did you do? Because your
What?
life just
Mm-hmm.
a mile a
Mm-hmm.
minute by day. So I
Mm-hmm.
think it's really helpful to structure some of
Yes,
the things.
100%. Yeah, and
Yeah.
to also make sure the buckets in your life, like it helps with balance, which I don't really believe in because I think balance you think it's all balance all the time, and I don't think that's what balance really is. But it allows you to look at your year and say, where are my efforts and energy going, and do I need to make some adjustments now instead of maybe burning out in one way or another, and then looking back and like, shoot, it just gives you some foresight to what you're going for, and then it gives you a chance to check yourself and be like, is this the life I want to have? Wow, I don't have any family trips or any fun on my calendar. Huh. So I'm willing to go all year without doing anything fun, without doing anything for myself. Is that the life that I want to live? And you can see it through the calendar.
Yeah. And spontaneous things like last year, like I didn't know at the beginning of the year I was gonna go to Japan, but I went to Japan. It was friggin' awesome, by the way, if no one's
So
ever been.
cool.
But like that came up spontaneously. So like I think giving yourself like, okay, I'm open to these things, but having the
Mm-hmm.
structure there as
Yeah,
well.
totally.
Kind of, yeah. So you're talking about the kids and doing these trips and stuff. I'm curious to have you because like we talked about this before. We both have 12-year-olds, at least the oldest. I know you have
Mm-hmm.
three. I've
Uh-huh.
similar age. So like I'm curious how you think about entrepreneurship when it comes to parenting. Is
Mm.
that something you readily talk to your kids about, or is it kind of out of sight or out of mind? Like, how do you approach it, I guess?
Yeah, I talk about it. I mean, I share with them as much as I can when things pop up. They hear me on the phone. They'll kind of know certain things that are happening, but there's not like boundaries in terms of like, do they know, I want them involved. I want them to know. I feel like there's so much about entrepreneurship that just helps you in life, being curious, just going for it, not having the answers, but taking the leap. If you really have a goal, you've got to put your focus in this one spot, be yourself, show up as yourself, all these things that I've learned as an entrepreneur that are really important and superpowers, they totally translate to being a parent. And so and maybe that's the lens that I live in because I'm an entrepreneur, but I think it's so beneficial for them to see me in action. I think it's valuable for me to I learn from my kids all the time, and I use them in my speeches, and I use experience as a parent. Becoming a parent made me a better entrepreneur. um, I became more patient, I became more empathetic, I became more aware of people's reality. Like, people are all different. I have 3 kids. My husband and I have raised them all, and they are 3 different human beings, and one of them will never have a clean room. She just won't. And the other one loves her clean room. So I could try to beat my like, beat this into her, like, not actually, but like
Oh, yeah.
be like, do this, clean your room, clean your room, clean your, or I could know that there's some level of what she's got. This is part of who she is. We can address parts of it and whatever, but like, there's people are who they are. We are not going to change people. That helped me tremendously as a business leader. So when I see someone come in, I'm not going to change who you are. I'm going to find a way to take your gifts and have it benefit the company or benefit our project or benefit what we're doing, because there's genius in everyone being themselves. That creates dynamic and all this. So it's very mixed in. I hope as they're getting a little older that they'll come with me when I give keynotes. they're very involved and they're aware of stuff. And, my podcast actually, which I haven't done in a while, but I learned a lot of lessons about, giving them space to be bored and those kinds of things that have been really important for them to just kind of grow as humans. So, yeah, it's definitely intertwined for sure.
Hmm. Have any of them, I know you had, what was it, Architecture Alley? That was your fake business.
Yes,
Has any of them tried to
very.
start a business or anything like that? Or?
Yeah, so my oldest, when she was like, I think she was probably 8, she started making resin. Like she saw this one thing. She's like science and creative kind of mixed together, and so she started making this jewelry. And I kind of put some. I was like, you could see if like boutiques locally would want to buy your stuff because she made necklaces and she loved it. And she had just had all this stuff, and she's like, "What do I do with it?" I'm like, "You could sell it." And so she was 8, and I have this really cute video of her walking cold selling into stores when we lived in Rockwall, Texas. She'd go into stores and with her, and she made everything like it was very kid made, but she'd go in and she'd go to the lady and say, "I have these necklaces. Would you want to sell them in your store?" And so yeah, I mean, it was called Friendship Factory. I don't know if it's still active, but I think that they know, like, if you want to do something, you just build it. Like, that's what their default, I think, will be because of what they've seen at home their whole life. I think that will be their default, when we have, and I try to stay out of it, to be honest. Like, I don't want to push you to do it. Like, it's not mine. I have my journey. You got to do your thing. So, like, I try to just give them the space to, if they want to create something, I'll support it, but I'm not going to lead it. I'm not trying to make little Megans, like I want them to be Harper and Stella and Kate, their own individual people. But I know they're surrounded by me in the conversation every day, all day. So I think it's rubbing off on them. And I would say what I hope is just that they lean into who they are and that they stay curious. And if they end up being entrepreneurs, great. But if they end up doing anything else that makes them happy, that's fantastic. That's all I care about.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that approach is like being supportive and giving them guidance where they ask, but then letting
Mm-hmm.
them do their things. Because I relate it very much to sports, right? We all know those parents, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe, I mean, your husband might see this because if he's a coach or
Totally.
been around, there's those parents that like they missed out on, whatever, high school baseball. So now they are just gonna
Mm-hmm.
grind the kid into it, and their kid doesn't really like it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They keep going with it. And there's
Yeah.
a different
I tell them with sports and actually with anything, I'll match your energy. If you want to get into violin and you put the effort in, like I'll get you whatever you need. I'll support it, whatever you need, this, that, I'll do whatever. But I'm not gonna drive it. If it's sports, like I'll match your energy. I'll get you lessons, put you on teams, we'll do whatever. But it's gotta be driven by you. Like I take your lead. And I think that's important in all facets of life because at the end of the day, too, that's giving them the space to be themselves. That's not me putting my expectations or my desires on them. That's not their race is not mine.
right.
So yeah, totally. And my husband has seen quite a bit of that.
Sure he has. Um, so let's so anyone out there, obviously we're talking a lot about getting started and kind of these different thought processes you can have, things to uncover. So if I am imagining people reach out to you randomly for advice and want some
Mm-hmm.
things, but I, you can give advice, but I also leave the opening to challenge people because I, like you, it's action that really creates it. Is
Mm-hmm.
there a challenge you would encourage someone to do or a question to ask themselves to kind of sit with, like something to really create some action today that helps them get started? Kind of curious what's on your mind about that.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things is like how much of yourself are you really letting unleash into what you do professionally? In this world that we live in, there's so much that we see of other people, and we want to, I see Sarah Blakely, I see Jesse Itzler. There's so much about them that I admire. I will never be as good at being Sarah Blakely as Sarah Blakely is. I will never be as good at being Jesse Itzler as Jesse Itzler will be. And yet, so many times, I think we see people and we try to emulate them. And I think that's a bad path to go down because the truth is each one of us are going to bring something really special and unique that might be just what your company needs, but you've got to be able to show up as yourself, or that your company, what you're building, your project, Like, how much of yourself are you really letting into what you're doing? Or are you putting up guardrails and saying, I don't want to talk about that because my parents got divorced. I don't want to talk about that because I had a failed business. Oh, I don't want to go into that because I really struggle with my health. I don't want to go, like you start to put these things around because you want to be perceived
Mhm.
as an expert or as somebody who has their act together or whatever. When the truth is the real genius and the real edge and the real uniqueness to anything comes from people being authentic. And so with that, I also challenge. So there's that one challenge is bring yourself. And the other challenge is when other people show you who they are, like be open to it. It doesn't have to be like what you thought. Maybe you can see someone for who they actually are and find a way to accept it, to value it, to find a way that can turn up the volume of the business in a certain way. So it's kind of like both, like show up as yourself. And then when other people show up as themselves, like in a positive way, leverage people being themselves. Like that
Yep.
brings an edge to a business when if a business is really just like letting people be themselves and letting people show up as themselves, they're not going to be as burnt out. They're going to be more excited. They're going to feel like they're having success because they're being able to be themselves, not trying to fit in a box. So, that would be my challenge is how much of you are you really letting into this company? I have a great example. Like right now I'm helping operate Jesse Itzler's this adventure club that he's got.
Mhm.
I am not an adventurer. I don't I have run one marathon in my life and I've run a few half marathons. I am not Jesse. I don't do these things. I'm working with Chris Hout, who is like this Olympian Ironman, insane. His resume is ridiculous. I have no idea. The other day, I was like, "What is a ruck? Is that like a backpack?" Like I don't. So I'm not going to come in and be like, oh, I know all that. Like that's unfortunate. But then if I would do that, because then we have members that come in and I add a different facet to the whole group because I'm not like them. That's a benefit to the company if I show up like myself versus trying to act like I am a mini version of Jesse or Chris or whatever. That's not helpful. They got that covered. They don't need that. They need me to be me. And everybody, I just think that's really important is to show up as yourself in whatever you're doing.
Well, by the way, both those are awesome. It goes back to what you just said, which is a kind of a nice wrap of our conversation, is about curiosity. Because if you go in thinking you know what a ruck is, or like, "Oh, I'm not going to ask it because it's a quote unquote dumb question, like that seems obvious or something,
Mm-hmm.
maybe that exposes a new idea that gets them
Mm-hmm.
thinking about, oh, if we're going to have people participate in this, oh, maybe we need a different education for them, or maybe
Mm-hmm.
who
Yeah.
knows what it
Who
brings up,
knows?
right?
Exactly.
And it brings
That's
up all these new ideas.
yeah, that Brian is you're exactly right. Who knows? Well, the answer is nobody. So like who like that's the whole beauty of it is you want people to be asking that question. Who knows? Like I don't know, but you're unlocking doors that would have been closed without you questioning it or being curious. Like you want
Yeah.
to unlock all those doors for sure.
Yeah, and I bet Chris probably appreciates that because he's done all these things. So
Mhm.
it's like I this is the one with anything. It's like I can't. There's certain things like let's take podcasting. I've been doing it
Mhm.
long enough. I cannot be a beginner again. I can
Mhm.
try to think about being a beginner, but it's really tough. So if I talk to people that want to start podcasts and they're asking certain questions, it really allows me to kind of get back into that beginner's mindset
Mhm.
based through
Mhm.
them. And it's
Mhm.
the same
Yeah.
thing you and Chris, right? The way you guys are working on Adventure Club. So
Yeah.
I think it's like we can't be a beginner again on certain things because we know too much. And
Yeah.
sometimes that's an issue,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Totally. And you know what else? You're right because that one could help tactically, right? Like that the fact that I ask these questions, it can help us as a company. The other thing that I've seen it do, it's strengthened my working relationship with the people I'm around. So John Carroll, he's the business side of things. It's the same thing. Like he's done unbelievable things in business. So I can me asking questions strengthens our relationship. Chris and I have this banter that's like a positive like workspace because we kind of can give each other grief, which strengthens our ability to lead this company with fun and authenticity. And that is felt by members and that makes it a more fun place to be. But that doesn't happen if I'm not showing up being like, what do you mean a ruck? Is that like a backpack? Like, what do we like, or whatever it is. There have been multiple times that I've had to ask them. So you're right. It's tactical like you can become a better company, but also it can just be like, um, you know, connecting with humans more and being, it's easier. You know, I will hear a lot people be like, I just feel like I've known you. And it's because I'm just, I don't know, like I just show up as myself, and there's that value. And we're all capable of doing that. Just like, but it's scary. It's scary for a lot of people that to like kind of put some guards down and let people know who they are. And have I been judged for it? Probably, yeah, for sure. People will underestimate me because I'll like ask the questions or whatever, and that's fine. But that's I'm willing for that to happen. I'm willing for people to judge me because I show up as myself, and I think there's a lot of value that comes with that.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Like this is I could probably talk to you for a couple of hours, but I won't take your time up anymore. This is
It's
awesome. I
fun.
really appreciate it. Yeah. Where could folks, I'm assuming LinkedIn, maybe anywhere else they can say hello to you where you spend the most time now?
Yeah. Yeah. LinkedIn is my favorite spot to be. I love it. I'm on Instagram, and I've got a website at Megan Reilly, but LinkedIn is where I spend most of the time. Speaking of just getting started, like a couple weeks ago, I posted like I'm just going to do a Zoom call. Any women that want to come on, I'm gonna. If you're interested, just let me know. I have no idea what I'm doing, Brian. Just to be clear, like I have no clue, but I said I'm going to do it, so I'm going to have some Zoom call with whoever, whatever women leaders want to come on. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I just feel like I want there to be conversation and availability for women, specifically in business and things. And I, so I had no idea what I'm doing. But I put it out there and there was interest. I'm like, okay, well, let's go. Let's like, I just want to serve people. And so when I was thinking about your podcast and sending people to LinkedIn, I'm like, that's where I want to help people. I want to serve people. I feel like I've had a lot of good experiences and good fortune and good support in my life. And I know that isn't the case for everybody. So I find it really important to give that to other people, whether I know them or not. So I try to do that on LinkedIn with my content and being available to people, and you know, and things like this. Like I appreciate the opportunity for you. I'm glad you reached out. I'm grateful to be on your show, and you do a great job. So you know, I really do appreciate our time together.
Yeah, I'm grateful as well. Thank you so much for coming on.